on Celtics games as well as various other programs on the network. Mr. Giles, how we doing, sir?
What's up, fellas? How we doing?
What's going on? How are you feeling with the Celtics now bouncing back on the second night of a back-to-back after an ugly loss to the Atlanta Hawks? Was that a get-right game last night, or are there still some lingering issues, do you think, with this team?
There was definitely elements of a get-right game. Obviously, the first quarter, you don't love how they fell behind by 13 once again, but the fact that they came out in the third quarter and just totally dominated, 10 assists, 0 turnovers, took care of the ball, and then followed that up in the fourth quarter. You have to feel encouraged about what you saw. But, for anyone out there that really was hoping that they were going to make a run in the NBA Cup, I'd say the odds are quite stacked against them after what they did on Tuesday.
What about those of us that don't give a rat's ass about the NBA Cup?
Yeah, I know. That's probably a growing audience, too, after they laid an egg against Atlanta. So, Andy, I guess you just keep marching on, man.
Okay, so I got to ask you the question about, we were just touching on it a little bit from the offensive end. Your guy, Eddie House, bringing up the red flag of points in the paint. I think our bigger issue, if we're going to look in the paint, is rebounding and the issues they've had rebounding. What do you think is the root of those issues? Is it as simple as, I don't know, you don't have Porzingis? Should Tillman be playing more? What is your level of concern with the issues with rebounding, and how do you think it gets fixed?
I think the rebounding, they're related, is part of it, right? So I think some of the offensive rebounding is just leading to more points in the paint, tips at the rim, whatever they may be. It felt like last night, there were a lot of team rebounds. So Cato only had, I think, 1 rebound, and he was your starting big last night because you saw everyone else kind of crash the glass. So it seemed like that was a point of emphasis to me last night, was to just rebound the ball better. And they obviously did that, and they also did a better job of protecting the rim and cutting down on the points in the paint. So the rebound seems like that would be more manageable at this point. Obviously, if you have Al Horford out there and Kristaps Porzingis, not necessarily at the same time, that's going to help things, but I think it was just kind of you have to focus on those things, mostly the rebounding, and that's going to pay dividends on the other stuff.
Giles, who do you think the third best player on the team has been so far?
I'd have to go with Derek White. I think that when you factor in his defense, he's averaging like 20 points per game. I'd have to go with Derek White.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think that in general, his three-point shooting and his defense this year seems to have gone up to another level. Like I'm starting to consider him among the all-time defensive guards, like in the league, like the Joe Dumarses of the world and the Jordans and, guys like that. The way that he's played defense these last 2 years, I think he's separating himself. Does it seem that way to you too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also look at just what he does in the fourth quarter. It feels like he's always making the right play in the fourth quarter. And for the most part, you also get that from Drew Holiday, but he's been phenomenal. And then it's kind of weird when he asked that question. It was almost like I was wondering, do you want me to throw Peyton Pritchard in this conversation?
I was waiting.
Because he's been phenomenal as well. And I think that he's great in the role they have him in, coming off the bench, providing scoring where they need him to. But I still have to go with Derek White and just what a great job he's done to the start of the season. We were even discussing last night, should he be an all-star? And I think you definitely have to give that heavy consideration. He's good enough to be on Team USA, albeit almost as like, an alternate guy was called in late. But he seems to me like he would be the third all-star for the Celtics.
Do you have any concerns, and it's a weird question to ask because he's had 2 very good games, Jaylen Brown, but I think you guys were the ones that reported, you were talking about it in one of the in-game hits, that this wasn't an acute injury. It developed in camp, and JB has said it's something he's going to have to manage this season in all likelihood. Do you have concerns about this hip thing?
I don't, because they played him on the second night of a back-to-back last night. I think that if you have any concerns about that the training staff, medical team is going to, hold Jaylen Brown out if they think that really does need to be managed in this situation. Because they know it's all about playing in the spring. So I think the whole team, the whole organization knows that. There's no point in risking a November 13th game, second night of a back-to-back at Brooklyn if it's any risk at all, because it's about playing in the spring. The same goes with Jayson Tatum, and wondering if he was going to play after he maybe tweaked his ankle, and he goes out there and plays 30-plus minutes. So the fact that all those guys played as many minutes as they did, I got to believe that they're looking at him saying these guys are good to go and they can give you the minutes.
We're talking with Tom Giles, NBC Sports Boston. Giles, I remember talking with you at Big Night Boston on opening night, and we were discussing the other teams in the Eastern Conference who may challenge the Celtics here. I don't think any of us had an undefeated 13-0 Cleveland Cavaliers on our bingo card. Are you surprised that a team that didn't really do that much in the offseason, other than extend some of their own players, they didn't make a lot of big trades or free agent signings? Are you surprised to see the success that they're having and the relative lack of success with teams like Philly and Milwaukee?
Absolutely. Who couldn't be? Like, how could you not be surprised that I think particularly what's going on with Philadelphia, Milwaukee, even the Knicks. Even the Knicks have, struggled. So all three of those teams, I think, are the bigger surprise. But Cleveland's played well. And I think if you look at their schedule, I know that they beat the Warriors pretty good, and a lot of people look at that and say that was their best win. But that almost felt like, to me, the Warriors beating the Celtics and then their next games against Cleveland, that Golden State was just fully invested in winning in Boston, and maybe it got them in a good spot when Cleveland beat them in Cleveland a couple nights later. But, to go into Madison Square Garden early in the year, that's a good win for Cleveland. And they've got a really solid starting five, and they've got a superstar who's not afraid of the moment, and Donovan Mitchell, and size as well with Mobley and Jared Allen that is, giving teams some fits. So right now, I don't see how you could put anyone else above them as the number 2 team in the Eastern Conference.
How do you think they match up with Boston, Cleveland? I know they played them in the playoffs last year. Mitchell got hurt, and it was Mobley or Allen. One of them wasn't playing, I don't think. So when they're at full strength and playing like they are right now, what sort of matchup problems do you think they present for a team like the Celtics?
Well, you could be looking at them in their rim protection. Also, I would assume they'll be pretty good on the high pick and roll because Mobley is as agile as he is with his length. So that's something that you'd be looking at. But I still believe that if the Celtics are playing their best basketball, that they should be able to beat Cleveland. But at this point, the Cavaliers are that team that you're talking about when you're talking about a team that could potentially give them the greatest fight.
Giles, you're around this team a lot. You break down every game, and I, from afar, thought they would be more dialed in, I think, to start the year, more desirous of making history and sort of showing something in the totality of this season. I don't think they've been as locked in as I expected. Have you been disappointed with the start to the season? I know that's high-class problems to say 3 losses is disappointing, but, even that Warriors loss at home that I think everybody thought they had circled and all that Olympic motivation, have you been disappointed at all with the start to the year?
No, I haven't. There was definitely had to be a moment there after the first few games where you're thinking, my God, how many games could this team actually win? Like, could they sniff 70 wins? So there has been kind of that little bit of, well, it is the NBA. There's going to be nights where you don't play well, and anybody can get anybody, and that's just going to happen throughout the season. So I don't think that you're going to see 70-plus wins the way I kind of felt out of the gate. I thought, you go back to opening night, and I talked to you guys before that game when they played the Knicks. They looked absolutely unbeatable. And, I don't know if Washington was the next game. Their first few games out of the gate, though, they looked so dominant that you thought that they could be kind of a historic team as far as from a wins perspective. So that maybe gets dialed back just a little bit because you do understand that there's going to be bumps and bruises along the way. But the other thing, too, is that, they're still not fully healthy. As many times as we talk about them, they didn't have Jaylen Brown against the Warriors or Kristaps Porzingis. And when they do get a full roster out there on the floor, I can't be disappointed with being 9-3 out of the chute.
Yep, certainly can't be. That's the voice of Tom Giles. You can catch him on NBC Sports Boston.